There comes a moment in life, silent, suffocating, where the weight of suffering presses so heavily against your soul that you wonder if God is even listening. You've cried, you've fought, you've done everything in your power to fix what's broken, and yet nothing changes. The betrayal still stings. The doors remain closed. The people who wounded you walk freely untouched, while you sit there unraveling in the loneliness of your pain. Maybe you've asked yourself, is God punishing me? Did I not pray enough? Have I not done enough to prove that I deserve relief? But what if, just for a moment, you entertained a different thought? What if this suffering, this agony that gnaws at your soul, isn't evidence of God's absence, but rather proof of his presence? What if the silence isn't rejection, but strategy? Pain is an unforgiving teacher. It strips away illusion, revealing the raw truth about people, about the world, and most painfully about yourself. It has a way of burning down everything artificial, leaving you face to face with your own fragility. That's uncomfortable. That's terrifying. And yet, there's something profoundly sacred in this suffering, something most people overlook. God is working, but he's working in a way you don't yet understand. You see, the human mind is obsessed with control. When life falls apart, we scramble to piece it back together, to force outcomes, to demand answers. We believe that if we just try harder, think smarter, push further, we can outmaneuver the suffering. But what if God is asking you to stop, to let go? What if he is telling you that your desperation to fix everything is actually blocking his hand from working in your life? There's a lesson here that few are willing to accept. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is stepping back and allowing God to move in his own time, in his own way. Because here's the truth. The pain that you feel, the injustice that keeps you up at night, the betrayal that left you breathless, it did not go unnoticed. God saw it. Every word spoken against you, every time you were dismissed, used, discarded, he saw it all. And while you may feel forgotten, while the enemy whispers that your suffering has no purpose, God is setting the stage for something far greater than you can comprehend. Have you ever noticed how the most powerful transformations in life don't happen in moments of comfort, but in seasons of suffering? That's because pain is a catalyst. It forces you to confront what you've been avoiding. It strips you of pride, of illusions, of attachments that were never meant to last. It refines you, but here's where most people fail. They resist the process instead of surrendering to it. They cling to bitterness. They fight for control. They demand explanations instead of doing the one thing that changes everything, trusting God enough to step back and let him work. Because you don't see the full picture. You don't see the weight of what God is preparing. You don't see the doors he's closing to protect you from something that would have destroyed you. You don't see the people he's removing because they would have poisoned your purpose. You don't see the lessons he's engraving onto your soul that will shape your destiny. You see the suffering, but he sees the victory on the other side of it. The question is, will you trust him? Will you stop trying to control the outcome and allow God to work? Will you let go of your need for revenge, for answers, for immediate relief, and instead surrender to the reality that his ways are higher than yours? Because if you do, something miraculous happens. The weight begins to lift. The pain no longer owns you. You begin to realize that you were never meant to carry this alone. God knows your pain. He sees your struggle. And if you would just step back, if you would just trust him instead of demanding your own way, you would come to realize that he has been orchestrating something far greater than you ever imagined. But how do you do this? How do you truly let go and trust God when every part of you wants to fight? Your suffering is not meaningless. God is using it to shape you. There is a truth that many struggle to accept. Suffering is not a sign of abandonment. It is often a sign of divine preparation. When you walk through pain, through trials that seem unrelenting, it is easy to assume that God has turned his face away from you. The enemy whispers lies into your ear, convincing you that your suffering has no purpose, that your cries fall on deaf ears. But what if the very thing you are asking God to remove is the tool he is using to transform you? Throughout history, some of the greatest spiritual figures endured immense suffering, not as a punishment, but as a process of refinement. The prophet Job lost everything, his wealth, his children, even his health. Yet, despite his suffering, Job remained steadfast in his faith. He questioned, he wept, but he did not curse God. And in the end, what did God do? He restored Job beyond what he had lost. The lesson is clear. Suffering is never wasted in the hands of God. God does not burden a soul beyond that it can bear. It will have the consequence of good, what good it has gained, and it will bear. This verse is a reminder that your suffering is not arbitrary. It is tailored to what you can handle, to what will ultimately bring out the strength, the wisdom, and the faith that God is cultivating within you. He is not burdening you. He is building you. Similarly, in the Bible, Romans 8:28 states, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Notice the words, in all things. That means even in suffering, even in betrayal, even in loss, God is working for your good. Your pain is not meaningless. It is a stepping stone to something greater. Gold is purified by fire. When raw gold is placed into intense heat, the impurities rise to the surface and are burned away. The result? A metal that is stronger, purer, and far more valuable than it was before. This is exactly what suffering does to the soul. God is placing you through a process where the impurities, the doubt, the fear, the attachments to things that were never meant for you are being burned away. The pain you feel is the fire refining you, not destroying you. But here's the challenge. Most people resist the fire. They fight the process. They question why they are being tested instead of surrendering to the lesson. And yet Isaiah 48:10 in the Bible tells us, see, I have refined you. Though not as silver, I have tested you in the furnace of affliction. The affliction is the test. It is the transformation. And when you stop resisting, when you stop seeing your suffering as a curse and start seeing it as preparation, everything changes. God's pattern. Before elevation, there is isolation. Look at any great individual chosen by God, and you will see a pattern. Before they were elevated, they were tested. Before Prophet Moses led his people to freedom, he was isolated in the wilderness. Before Prophet Joseph became a ruler, he was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, and wrongfully imprisoned. Before Prophet Muhammad spread the final revelation, he was mocked, boycotted, and persecuted. Pain precedes purpose. The suffering you endure is not a punishment. It is a preparation for something greater. It is shaping you into someone who is capable of handling the very blessings you have been praying for. Because here's the truth. If God gave you the blessing without the process, you wouldn't be able to carry its weight. Stop asking why and start asking what. Many people get stuck in their suffering because they keep asking, why me? Why is this happening? Why is God allowing this? But the real question should be, what is God trying to teach me? What part of me is being strengthened through this trial? What impurity is being burned away so that I can walk into the next season of my life with wisdom and resilience? Do the people think that they will be left to say we believe and they will not be tried? But we have certainly tried those before them, and God will surely make evident those who are truthful, and he will surely make evident the liars. Trials reveal truth. They expose who is truly faithful and who only seeks God in times of ease. They separate those who trust in God's plan from those who only want comfort. And this is why suffering is not meaningless. It is evidence that you are being prepared, not abandoned. If you are in pain right now, I want you to remember this. Your suffering is temporary, but the transformation it brings is eternal. God is doing something in your life that you cannot yet see. The darkness you feel is not the end. It is the beginning of something far greater. Do not fight the process. Do not rush the healing. Allow yourself to be molded, to be refined, to be shaped by the very thing that was meant to break you. Because when God restores, when he finally brings you out of this season it will be so much greater than what you lost. Your suffering is not meaningless. It is the mark of someone being shaped by the hands of the divine. Trust him. Step back and watch as he turns your pain into power. The battle is not yours to fight. God is handling what you cannot. There is a kind of pain that cuts deeper than any wound, a betrayal that doesn't come from enemies, but from those who were supposed to protect you. When family turns against you, when the very people you trusted cause you harm, it creates a wound that logic cannot heal. You did everything right. You showed love, loyalty, patience, and yet instead of being cherished, you were cast aside, misunderstood, used, or even betrayed. It's in these moments that the heart cries out, "Why, God? Why would you allow the people I love to hurt me this way? Why did you place me in this family if all I would know is rejection and pain?" And the silence of the heavens can feel like another betrayal. But what if the silence is not abandonment? What if it is strategy? What if God is not ignoring your pain, but handling the situation in a way you cannot yet see? The problem with family wounds is that they are complicated. Unlike a stranger's betrayal, you cannot simply walk away and never look back. There are bonds, emotional, spiritual, sometimes even financial, that keep you connected to the very people who hurt you. And in that entanglement, you feel powerless. You try to explain yourself, but they refuse to listen. You try to mend the relationship, but they keep finding ways to tear you down. And worst of all, they walk away with no consequences while you sit with the burden of brokenness. But here is what you must understand. You were never meant to fight this battle on your own. The injustice you feel, the pain that weighs heavy on your soul, the silent tears you shed, God sees it all. Nothing escapes his sight. He is not blind to the whispers behind your back, the favoritism that pushed you aside, the moments when you were left out, overlooked, or ridiculed. And he is not indifferent. And they planned, and God also planned, and God is the best of planners. Your family may have schemed against you. They may have plotted in ways that left you feeling defeated, but God is the master planner. He sees beyond what you see. He knows what is spoken behind closed doors, what is hidden behind fake smiles, what intentions lie beneath seemingly innocent actions. And he is working not in your time, but in his. You don't have to seek revenge. You don't have to prove your worth. You don't have to carry the weight of fixing something that was broken long before you were even aware of the damage. God will handle them in his way, in his time. Look at the story of Joseph in the Bible. His own brothers, the very people who should have protected him, betrayed him, threw him into a pit, and sold him into slavery. They thought they had erased him from their lives. But what did God do? He elevated Joseph, placing him in a position of power far beyond what his brothers could have imagined. And in the end, the very ones who betrayed him had to stand before him, needing his mercy. Genesis 50:20 reminds us, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Your family may have wronged you, but they do not have the final say over your life. The same God who turned Joseph's betrayal into a blessing is working in your life right now. The pain you feel is not in vain. The rejection you endured is not the end of your story. The humiliation, the injustice, the heartbreak, God is turning it all into something far greater than you can imagine. But here's what many people struggle with: letting go of the need to control the outcome. When you've been wronged, everything in you wants justice now. You want the people who hurt you to feel what you felt. You want them to acknowledge their mistakes, to apologize, to suffer the consequences of their actions. But the reality is, some people will never admit what they did to you. Some will never feel guilt, will never seek forgiveness, will never even think twice about the damage they caused. And that realization can be devastating unless you understand that God is handling it. God's justice does not always come in the way you expect. Sometimes he humbles those who wronged you by stripping away the very things they used to hurt you. Other times he allows them to succeed for a while, only to bring them to a moment where they must face their own downfall. And in some cases, God removes you from the situation completely, not to punish you, but to protect you. Azelzallah 99:778 states, "So whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, and whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it. No action goes unseen. No betrayal goes unnoticed. No word spoken against you is forgotten. The ones who hurt you will face the consequences of their actions, not by your hand, but by God's. You don't have to orchestrate their downfall. You don't have to carry the burden of making them understand your pain. Let God work. Step back and trust that He is already moving on your behalf. God has a way of handling those who hurt His children that goes beyond anything you could do on your own. Whether it is through humbling them, exposing them, removing them, or allowing them to face the weight of their own choices, justice will come. The key is trusting that His way is better than yours. The moment you let go of your need to control the outcome is the moment you free yourself from the grip of their actions. Stop exhausting yourself trying to make them see the truth. Stop replaying conversations in your mind, hoping that one day they'll understand. God sees it all, and He is handling it in ways you cannot yet see. Your only task is to keep walking forward, knowing that in the end, He will handle them and He will heal you. God removes what is harming you even when you don't understand it. There is a particular kind of pain that comes from being hurt by your own family, a pain that feels unnatural, unfair, and deeply personal. These are the people who were supposed to stand by you, to protect you, to love you unconditionally. Yet, instead of safety, you found yourself in a space where you were ridiculed, betrayed, dismissed, or abandoned. And that kind of wound does not heal easily. At first, you do everything in your power to make sense of it. You ask yourself if you were the problem, if you could have been better, if you should have tried harder. You convince yourself that if you just love them more, if you just prove your worth, they will finally see you. But time after time, your efforts are met with coldness. You break yourself to keep the relationship alive, yet they continue to treat you as if you are disposable, and still you hold on, hoping that one day things will change. But what if the very people you are trying to keep close are the ones God is trying to remove from your life? What if their absence is not a punishment, but a form of divine protection? Most people struggle with this because they assume that family is sacred, that blood should always come first. They believe that no matter how much pain they endure, they must keep these toxic relationships alive. But what they fail to realize is that not everyone who shares your bloodline is meant to walk with you in your destiny. Some people are tied to you by blood, but are not tied to you by purpose. And when God sees that certain individuals are only there to drain you, to hinder your growth, to fill your life with confusion and suffering, He begins to separate you from them. And when that separation starts, it is painful. You will feel abandoned. You will feel misunderstood. You will feel like you are losing something essential. But what you don't realize in that moment is that God is cutting ties that were never meant to last. He is breaking chains that would have held you back from your true potential. Some of the people you love the most are the very ones keeping you in cycles of self-doubt and emotional exhaustion. You feel stuck not because you lack ability, but because the people surrounding you are feeding you negativity. You have been trying to heal in the same environment that keeps wounding you. And God knows that if you remain in that space, you will never grow into the person He created you to be. So He starts removing them, not to punish you, but to free you. At first, it won't make sense. You will question why God is allowing people to walk away. You will wonder why certain relationships seem to fall apart despite your efforts. You will feel like you are losing everything, when in reality, you are gaining something much greater. Peace, clarity, and the ability to finally step into the life that was meant for you. Some people are only meant to be in your life for a season. They were never supposed to be permanent. They were there to teach you a lesson, to reveal something about yourself, or to push you toward a deeper dependence on God. But when their season is over, trying to hold on to them will only cause you more pain. One of the hardest things to accept is that God sometimes removes people without giving you an explanation. He doesn't always reveal why things ended, why they changed, why they turned against you. And that's because the explanation is not necessary for the healing. Faith is. You don't need to understand everything to trust that He's working in your favor. The people who hurt you, who mistreated you, who made you feel small, God saw it all. And rather than allowing you to remain in that environment, He is shifting things. You may not see the full picture yet, but one day you will look back and realize that what felt like rejection was actually protection, that what felt like abandonment was actually elevation, that what felt like the end was actually the beginning of something better. Right now, your only responsibility is to stop resisting the separation. Stop trying to hold on to people who have already shown you who they are. Stop trying to fix relationships that God Himself is breaking apart. Stop chasing after those who have made it clear that they are not meant to walk this journey with you. Because when God removes something from your life, He is making room for something greater. When He takes away what is harming you, He is preparing something that will heal you. And when He allows people to walk away, He is leading you toward those who will love you the way you were always meant to be loved. Control is an illusion. True strength is found in surrender. When family wounds you, the most instinctive response is to try to regain control. You replay conversations in your head, thinking about what you could have said differently. You wonder if you should have been more patient, more forgiving, more agreeable. You analyze every interaction, searching for a way to fix the relationship, to mend what was broken, to make them see your side. But despite all your efforts, nothing changes. The pain lingers, the distance grows, and worst of all, they continue on as if your suffering doesn't even matter. This is where frustration begins to turn into exhaustion. You want to be heard, you want to be understood, you want justice, fairness, closure, but no matter what you do, the situation remains out of your hands. And that is when you must come to a sobering realization: control is an illusion. You are not in charge of changing people. You cannot force someone to love you the way you deserve. You cannot make someone see the truth if they are determined to live in denial. And you cannot heal a wound that someone refuses to acknowledge. When you finally accept that control is an illusion, something powerful happens. You begin to let go, not out of weakness, not out of defeat, but out of understanding that your energy is better spent elsewhere. You stop fighting battles that were never yours to fight. You stop running in circles trying to prove yourself to people who have already decided how they want to treat you. You stop allowing their rejection to dictate your self-worth. Letting go does not mean you stop caring. It does not mean you erase the love you once felt. It does not mean you pretend the pain never happened. What it means is that you surrender the burden to a power far greater than yourself. It means you release the need for immediate answers and trust that what is happening is part of a divine plan you cannot yet understand. It means you step back and allow God to do what only He can do. Surrendering is not about giving up. It is about shifting your focus. Instead of pouring your energy into people who refuse to change, you begin to pour that energy into your own healing. Instead of seeking validation from those who refuse to see your worth, you start to find validation in the fact that you were created for something far greater than their approval. Instead of trying to control the actions of others, you focus on controlling how much access they have to you, how much of your heart you are willing to leave open for them to wound again. There is a strength in surrender that few people ever experience because they are too afraid to let go. They cling to toxic relationships out of habit, out of guilt, out of fear that if they walk away, they will never be loved again. But the truth is, holding on to what is hurting you does not make you strong. It makes you a prisoner. Real strength is found in knowing when to walk away, in trusting that what is meant for you will never require you to beg, to shrink yourself, or to endure endless suffering just to keep the peace. People often believe that if they just try hard enough, they can fix what is broken. But what if the breaking was necessary? What if God allowed the pain not to destroy you, but to push you towards something greater? What if the very thing you are fighting to hold on to is the thing that is keeping you from the life you were meant to live? There comes a moment when you must decide what matters more, forcing a relationship to work at any cost, or trusting that if it is meant to be, God will restore it in His time and His way. Until then, your only task is to surrender, to stop chasing, to stop explaining, to stop proving yourself to people who refuse to see your worth. Your task is to heal, to grow, to step into the life that is waiting for you beyond this pain. When you stop trying to control the outcome, you create space for God to work in ways you never expected. You allow room for clarity, for peace, for restoration, not on your terms, but on His. And when that happens, you begin to realize that surrender was never about losing. It was about gaining something far greater than what you were holding on to. Justice belongs to God. Those who hurt you will reap what they have sown. When family betrays you, disregards you, or treats you unjustly, the hardest part is accepting the lack of consequences. They move on with their lives as if nothing happened, as if the pain they caused you doesn't even exist. They continue their daily routines, laughing, celebrating, and thriving, while you are left in the shadows, carrying the weight of their actions. The injustice of it all burns deep. You ask yourself, how can they get away with this? How can they hurt me so deeply and face no consequences? This is where the struggle begins. You start to believe that maybe justice is something you must bring about yourself. Maybe you need to confront them, make them see what they've done, force them to acknowledge their wrongdoing. Maybe if you fight hard enough, they will finally understand the pain they caused. Maybe if you retaliate, they will feel even a fraction of what you endured. But this is a dangerous trap, because the moment you take justice into your own hands, you start carrying a burden that was never meant for you. The weight of revenge, of proving yourself, of making sure they don't go unpunished, slowly drains your soul. You become consumed with their actions, with their choices, with whether or not they will ever pay for what they did. But the truth is, you were never meant to hold that responsibility. Justice does not belong to you, it belongs to God. There is a universal law that no one can escape. Every action has consequences. Every word spoken, every betrayal, every deception carries weight. No one is exempt from reaping what they have sown. The people who hurt you may think they have escaped justice, but what they do not realize is that there is a divine system in place that never fails. It does not always act on human timelines, and it does not always punish in the way we expect, but it is always working. Some people will experience the weight of their actions through life circumstances that humble them. They will lose things they once took for granted, experience betrayals of their own, or find themselves trapped in the very pain they once inflicted on others. Others will face an internal battle, guilt, restlessness, an emptiness that no success or pleasure can fill. They will live their lives haunted by the harm they caused, unable to find true peace. And for some, justice will come in the most unexpected ways. Doors will close, relationships will crumble, and everything they built on the suffering of others will eventually collapse. But here's where most people go wrong. They wait for justice with bitterness in their hearts. They obsess over when and how it will happen. They become so fixated on their enemies receiving punishment that they stop focusing on their own healing. They measure their progress by whether or not the people who hurt them are suffering, instead of focusing on whether or not they are truly moving forward. Justice is inevitable, but it is not your job to control its timing. The more you try to force it, the more you delay your own peace. Because justice is not just about punishing those who did wrong. It is about restoring those who were wronged. And that restoration can only happen when you release the need to see their downfall. Letting go does not mean allowing people to escape accountability. It does not mean pretending the hurt didn't happen. It means trusting that God sees, that He knows, and that He will handle it far better than you ever could. It means understanding that your healing is more important than your enemy's suffering. It means realizing that your future is far greater than the pain of your past. The people who hurt you will have to answer for their actions, whether it happens tomorrow, years from now, or in ways you may never witness. That is not your battle to fight. Your only responsibility is to heal, to move forward, and to trust that in the grand design of life, no one escapes the consequences of their actions. When family wounds you, the pain is unlike any other. It is deep, personal, and inescapable. These are the people who are meant to stand beside you, to protect you, to offer love without conditions. Yet, instead of kindness, you were met with betrayal. Instead of support, you were dismissed. Instead of love, you were given coldness, rejection, or even cruelty. And the worst part is, they continue their lives as if nothing happened, as if your suffering is insignificant, as if your pain is not real. You wonder how they can live with themselves while you struggle to carry the weight of what they did. You wonder if they will ever acknowledge the damage, if they will ever feel the consequences of their actions. You wonder if there will ever be justice. The moment you begin to focus on what they deserve, you begin to carry something that is not yours to bear. You hold on to anger, waiting for the day when they will feel the same pain they caused you. You imagine them realizing their mistake, regretting what they did, coming back to apologize. And when that doesn't happen, resentment grows. You feel trapped in a cycle of frustration and disappointment, unable to move forward because you are waiting for something that may never come. The truth is, justice does not always come in the way we expect. It does not always come in a public downfall, a confession of guilt, or a moment of reckoning that satisfies our sense of fairness. Sometimes, justice happens in silence, behind closed doors, in ways you may never witness. But just because you don't see it doesn't mean it isn't happening. There is no action without consequence. Every betrayal, every lie, every moment of cruelty carries a weight. No one escapes the natural law of justice, even if it seems like they do. The people who hurt you may appear to be thriving, but what you see on the outside is not the full picture. Some people carry their consequences internally: restlessness, emptiness, the inability to form real connections, a constant sense of dissatisfaction no matter what they achieve. They may look successful, but deep inside they are being confronted with the weight of their own actions. Others will experience consequences through life itself. The same way they made you feel small, someone else will make them feel invisible. The same way they discarded you, they will find themselves abandoned when they least expect it. The same way they mocked your pain, they will find themselves suffering without anyone to turn to. The pain they inflicted will return to them, not because you wished for it, but because that is the nature of justice. You do not have to seek revenge. You do not have to wait for their downfall. You do not have to carry the responsibility of making sure they pay for what they did. That is not your role. And the longer you hold on to it, the more you delay your own peace. The greatest mistake people make is believing that their healing depends on another person's suffering. They think that if the person who hurt them finally experiences pain, they will feel relief. But healing does not come from witnessing someone else's downfall. It comes from letting go, from releasing the weight of their actions, from understanding that justice belongs to God, not to you. When you focus too much on the people who hurt you, you give them power over you. You allow them to occupy your mind, to dictate your emotions, to control your inner world long after the damage has been done. The more you replay the past, the more you keep yourself trapped in it. The more you wait for their suffering, the more you remain tied to them. Justice will come, but it is not for you to monitor or control. Your energy is better spent elsewhere. On healing, on rebuilding, on stepping into the life that is waiting for you beyond this pain. Some people will never acknowledge what they did. They will never admit their wrongs. They will never apologize. and that is something you must learn to accept. But just because they refuse to take responsibility does not mean they are free from it. They will face what they have done in ways you cannot predict. Their actions will return to them. Their choices will shape their reality, and eventually they will have to confront the consequences of their behavior. Letting go is not about pretending the pain never happened. It is not about excusing what they did or minimizing your suffering. It is about understanding that you are not responsible for their justice. You are not responsible for making sure they feel the weight of their actions. You are responsible for your own healing. You are responsible for not allowing their actions to define your life. You are responsible for freeing yourself from the burden of waiting for justice to unfold in a way that satisfies your expectations. The people who hurt you will face what they have done in time, in ways that are beyond your control. But your peace does not depend on their punishment. Your healing does not depend on their suffering. You do not need to carry the weight of justice because it was never yours to hold. The moment you release it, the moment you step back and allow God to handle what you cannot, is the moment you begin to reclaim your freedom. When family wounds you, it feels like a betrayal that cuts deeper than any other. The people who were meant to protect you, to stand by you, to lift you up, become the very ones who tear you down. It's not just the hurtful words or the rejection. It's the realization that they see your pain and choose to do nothing. They act as if your feelings don't matter, as if your suffering is insignificant. They go about their lives as though they have done nothing wrong, while you are left carrying the weight of what they did. At first, you try to fix it. You reach out, hoping for an apology, hoping that maybe if you explain yourself better, they will finally understand. You make excuses for them, thinking that perhaps they didn't mean to hurt you, that maybe if you were more patient, more forgiving, more understanding, things will change, but they don't. Instead, the more effort you put in, the more distant they become. They take your kindness for weakness. They continue to dismiss you, ignore you, or even mock you. It's in moments like these that you begin to question everything. You wonder why God would allow the very people who are supposed to love you to be the ones who hurt you the most. You question whether you are the problem, whether you are unlovable, whether you will ever find the support and acceptance that your heart so desperately craves. The silence from them is deafening, but the silence from God feels even louder. You ask, why, God? Why am I suffering at the hands of the very people who should be protecting me? Why do they get to move on without consequences while I am left to pick up the broken pieces? But what if the silence is not abandonment but strategy? What if God is not ignoring your pain but working in ways you cannot yet see? What if He is separating you from people who were never meant to walk with you into the next season of your life? Sometimes the very thing you are asking God to fix is the thing He is trying to remove. You pray for reconciliation, for healing, for love. But what if He knows that keeping those people in your life will only bring you more pain? What if He sees their hearts more clearly than you do and knows that they will never change? Often hold on to toxic relationships out of fear. They believe that because someone is family, they must endure the pain, that they must keep fighting to be accepted, that they must continue proving their worth. But what they fail to realize is that not everyone connected to you by blood is meant to stay in your life. Family is not about a title. It is about the way you are treated. If someone continuously hurts you, belittles you, or disregards your feelings, they are not acting as family. And when God sees that you are holding on to people who are harming you, He will intervene. Letting go does not mean you are weak. It does not mean you are giving up. It means you are choosing peace over pain. It means you are choosing to trust that God sees what you cannot, that He knows what is best for you. It means understanding that just because someone is part of your family does not mean they are meant to be part of your destiny. Some people are meant to be left behind. The hardest part is trusting that justice will come, You want them to feel what you felt, to experience the pain they put you through. You want them to wake up one day and realize how wrong they were. But justice does not always come in the way you expect. Some people will face their consequences through the loss of relationships, through the destruction of their own peace, through the emptiness that comes from treating others poorly. Others will carry their consequences internally, never finding true happiness because they have built their lives on hurting others. You do not have to be the one to deliver justice. You do not have to make them understand. You do not have to wait for an apology that may never come. The moment you let go of that burden, the moment you release the need for revenge or recognition, is the moment you begin to heal. God will handle them in His own way, in His own time. Your only task is to step back, trust, and allow yourself to walk away from the pain they caused. When family wounds you, it feels like an injustice, too heavy to bear. The people who were supposed to love you unconditionally became the very source of your deepest pain. You tried to fix it, to understand it, to endure it, but no matter how much effort you put in, they did not change. The pain lingered, the wounds deepened, and the weight of their actions became a burden that you were never meant to carry. But now you must make a choice to no longer be bound by their mistreatment, to no longer seek closure from people who refuse to give it, and to no longer allow their actions to define your worth. Justice is not yours to deliver. It is not your responsibility to make them see what they have done, to wait for their regret, or to force them to feel what you have felt. That battle is not yours. It belongs to God. He sees the betrayals, the rejection, the unspoken pain that you carry in silence. He knows the weight of your suffering, and He is not indifferent to it. But His justice is not on your timeline, and it is not always in the way you expect. Some will reap what they have sown in ways you may never witness. Others will live their lives appearing untouched, but their hearts will remain restless, their souls unsettled. Whatever the outcome, know this: no one escapes the consequences of their actions, and no injustice goes unnoticed in the eyes of the divine. Your healing does not depend on their suffering. Your peace does not require their remorse. Your future is not tied to their acceptance. You do not need their apology to move forward, nor do you need their validation to know your worth. You are stronger than the pain they caused, and you are not defined by the people who failed to love you the way you deserve. So today, you let go, not in weakness, but in strength. You release the need for revenge, the desire for acknowledgement, the expectation of justice on your terms. You surrender it all into the hands of the one who sees what you cannot, who knows what is best for you, and who will handle them in His own way. Step forward with peace, knowing that your destiny is not bound to those who have hurt you. Your life is greater than the pain of your past. You were not meant to stay in suffering. You were meant to rise beyond it. And as you walk away from what no longer serves you, trust that God is leading you towards something far greater than what you lost. Now go, live, heal, and step into the life